Well, hello, my friends. I've got some fun following projects for you today, so thanks so much for joining me. Let's get started. This is an 8x8 project board that I got off of Amazon. I will leave a list below in the description box of everything I use in today's video. I'm going to give the flat side of this a couple of coats of my Fusion mineral paint in the color Parchment. This is a piece of rice paper for decoupage that I got from Etsy. I'm going to be using the big house section of this. I love this little house. It just looks like fall, but also a little bit creepy for Halloween. So I'm going to decoupage this on top of that board. And it was actually the perfect size for this. There's just enough to go over the edges and then sand off the excess. I'm applying my Mod Podge on like the first third. I'm going to spritz that paper with some water. This will just help those fibers expand a little bit and make it easier to work with. I'm going to smooth that out using my brayer, and then I will move on and do the same thing for the next two sections. When that was all dry, I took my little finger sander and just went around all the edges, getting off that excess paper. Now I'm going to give this a final seal coat of the DIY Liquid Patina. Okay, so I use both the Liquid Patina and the Mod Podge. It just depends on the fragility of the paper I'm using. I like the Liquid Patina for the more fragile papers and Mod Podge for the thicker papers like the rice paper that I just used. Now I'm going to make some castings. I'm using Das Air Dry Clay, and this is a mold by Redesign. I'm going to squish that in there and then scrape it off the excess. And then I can just roll that out. I always use cornstarch in the mold to help with the release of the clay. And I just thought this was interesting right here when I scraped that off. It made like this little ruffle. I don't know if you can see that. So like if you had use for something like that in a mixed media project or something, you could just save that, let it dry flat. Anyway, I just thought that was kind of interesting. So I lay these on there and I just need to trim off a little bit off of each one. I'm not doing the beveled edges. For this piece, I preferred to do just the straight cut. It is kind of more of a primitive look, I guess. Anyway, I liked it, but you can do it however you want. Now I'm just going to take that Titebond Quick and Thick glue and start putting these into place, making sure that they're all just at the edge but not hanging over, lightly tapping them down so that they are secure but not squishing my clay. And when the glue has set up, I'm going to go ahead and paint these with raw umber. This takes a little bit of time. I don't know about you, but when I work with clay and I go to paint it, there's like this little fairy that comes out at night and causes all the little white dots from the clay to show through that you could have sworn you covered with the first coat. So you do a second coat and then a third coat, and then you still find more little white dots. Like, it's just incredible to me, but it happens every time. So just be patient, get everything covered, and now we're going to go in and do some dry brushing. I'm starting with a color called Mushroom. I like to do my dry brushing in like 2 or 3 different shades from darker to lighter. I just like the look that it gives. So I'm going to do this on all of the castings and then around that edge as well. The next color is Oyster Beige. I'm going to do the same thing with this. And if you're not familiar with dry brushing, you just get some paint on your brush, wipe most of it off, and just lightly go over your surface. The last color and the lightest color is Light Mocha. The last thing I do is attach a sawtooth hanger onto the back of this. It could stand up on its own, but I want there to be an option to hang it. I love how this one turned out. Let me know what you think. The inspiration for my next project was inspired by our two golden retriever grand dogs. This is Ruby, Ball is Life, and this is Rosie, not a care in the world. I'm starting with this little wood square from Dollar Tree. I'm going to give it a coat of the Fusion Parchment paint. It was the perfect size for these napkins that I found on Etsy. The little golden retriever with the fall leaves. I'm going to go ahead and cut out one of these and then remove the other ply. It's just a 2-ply napkin. I use a piece of Scotch tape to grab onto that back piece and just pull that away. I'm going to use DIY's Liquid Patina for this because it is a fragile napkin. So I'm going to work in two sections, just the top half and then the bottom half. Spreading that on, smoothing it out using my brayer, and doing the same thing on the bottom part. When that's dry, I sand off those edges with my finger sander just like I did on the first project. Then I give it a sealer coat of the liquid patina, making sure I get all those edges really well. I'm using Country Chic chalk paint in the color Vanilla Frosting to paint the inside section of this 8x8 board. It's the same one I used on the previous project, only I've reversed it and I'm using the other side this time as the front. I'll do a couple of coats of that, and while that's drying, I'm taking my antique wax to go around the edges of the piece that I did with the little golden retriever napkin on it. I'm going to just put that on with my finger and then wipe it back with the soft cloth. So now I have a stencil I want to use. I think I got this from Amazon, and I am only going to be I'm going to do a raised stencil on the perimeter. I don't want it in the middle where that 4-inch wood piece is going to go. So I'm going to tape this off so that I just get my modeling paste around the perimeter. I'm using a little plastic palette knife, and I'm just going to start spreading this on, filling that into that stencil, just making sure that I don't get too carried away and drag it over into the middle section where I don't want it. When I was done, I used some tweezers to grab that stencil and pull it out. There was no way to get your fingers in there to grab it any other way. So there it is. Once it's dry, I give it a coat of the vanilla frosting. I don't need to coat the entire inside, just over that modeling paste. I'm using Fusion's cast iron to paint the rest of this board. I'm starting with the hardest part, which is that inside lip. Once I get that done, I move on to the outside, and then I will do the sides and the back. I seal the inside portion with Duraclear Ultra Matte Sealer, and now I'm going to apply some Dixie Belle Van Dyke Brown Glaze. I'll brush this on like half the board and then wipe it back with a cloth, and then I use a baby wipe to clean up a little bit more. I really just kind of wanted this to catch the details and not get total coverage, so I just wiped it back until I was happy with it. Now I've got some antique gold rub and buff. I started off with a brush, but that wasn't really working well, so I just went in with my finger to rub this over those raised stenciled areas, giving it a little bit of sheen. I use that same rub and buff around the edges of the little 4x4 board. And normally I would do antiquing wax over this color because I love the way it looks, but I decided to just go ahead and continue the theme of using that Van Dyke brown glaze, brushing it on and wiping it back. I'm using these adhesive foam tabs to attach my little golden retriever board to the inside of my project board. I want to make sure they stay on. They're they have adhesive, but I'm going to add some Fabri-Tac glue to make sure this sticks for good. I'm going to glue those on inward so that the tabs aren't too close to the outside, then remove the protective cover and add a little bit of Titebond Quick and Thick to these, because that will give me a little bit of working time in case I need to move this, which I did. Like, I was pretty close with my initial placement, but I did have to make a few adjustments, and I had time to do that because the Quick and Thick doesn't set up as fast as the Fabri-Tac glue. I put some weight on it and let it dry overnight. Now I'm doing some antique rub and buff around the edges, and I'm going to do those inside edges as well. I added a sawtooth hanger to the back of this one as well. And here's our happy golden retriever. For this one, I'm going to use this little decorative wood piece that I picked up on clearance and give it a makeover. I need to go ahead and get those stickers off the back, so I used my heat tool to help heat that up and make it easier to remove. Then I took it out and gave it a really good sanding. Now I'm going to cover the front of this with a coat of Fusion paint in the color Parchment. Now I have this really cool piece of decoupage paper from Decoupage Queen. I'm going to cut out the image with the raven on it, and I will be decoupaging that onto the front of that little coffee mug. So I lay this on there. I want to line up that side next to where the handle is, make sure that's lined up really well. And then I am just going to do the same process, applying the Mod Podge, smoothing it out, doing it in a couple of different sections. And then once it's completely dry, I will sand off the excess around the edges with the little finger sander. To get inside that handle area, I could get a little bit of it with the finger sander, but it was, pretty tight fit. So I just grabbed an emery board and used that to finish it off. And that little emery board also came in handy to get those tight corners where the handle meets up to the mug. Now I'm going to go ahead and seal this with a coat of the Mod Podge. I'm using the matte Mod Podge. And I'm going to paint the rest of this with Fusion's cast iron. It was a little tricky, getting the tight corners, and this MDF wood, the paint doesn't go on super smooth. You have to really kind of work it in. But in the end, it turned out just fine. You have to use a smaller brush to go inside that little handle, but I was able to get it all covered. I have some small wooden numbers that I got from Amazon. I painted the fronts of these with the burnt umber, and then now that it's dry, I'm going to go over it with brushed bronze metallic paint. And this is a little trick I discovered to roll up a piece of tape with the sticky side out, and then just stick your number on there, and you can hold onto the tape and get it all painted instead of getting that paint all over your fingers. I'm going to use that same paint to go around the edges like I would with the rub and buff, only I'm just going to use that paint instead. I'm going to go around all the edges, and then I decide to go ahead and dry brush this over the black portions of the cup just to add a little more to it. Now with the numbers, I'm doing the opposite of what I just did on the cup. I'm dry brushing black over the brushed bronze instead of brushed bronze over the black. This will add a little bit of age to these, so I think they're more fitting for the project that way. So now I have a square of muslin and a square of cheesecloth, and I'm using Fabri-Tac glue to put those two together. I've got the cheesecloth at a different angle than the muslin. Once that glue is dry, I'm grabbing archival ink in the color Pebble Beach and a little brush applicator. I'm just going to grunge this up a little bit. And here's how it looks when it's all done. Now I have this card from, I think this was a Temu purchase. I got a bunch of these kind of weird little Halloween things. I took a photocopy of it so that I could cut out the words at the top. I want to use the word October. So I just copied it because I didn't like the color that was on the original one. And I glued that onto a piece of cardstock. And then I'm going to fussy cut around the edges, trying to get as close as I can to how it's printed on there. It's just kind of a, wavy little outline or border. So I'm going to get that all done, and then I'm going to kind of cut out the word October and just do the best I can to round off those edges. I've got to grunge this up too with some more of that archival ink around the edges. And it's time to put this all together on my little coffee mug. I'm going to glue down the fabric, the two pieces of fabric first, and then I have a piece of black netting, another square, that I'm going to put on top of that. Then I will glue on the numbers. And the last thing to do is to add that little piece I made that says October. I think this would be great to put on a coffee bar or on a tiered tray in a kitchen. Let me know what you think. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope you got some inspiration from today's video and are ready to go tackle some new fall projects. Hit me up in the comments if you have any questions. Have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you next time.